Hello, this is Miss Kelso, and I just wanted to go over how we're going to be grading in our mythology and folklore class. It is based on standards-based grading, and so I just wanted to make sure everyone understood how that worked. So I've just created a little video to go over that. So standards-based grading, basically everything is graded on a 4-point scale. So instead of like A, B, C, D, and F, you can get 4, 3, 2, 1, or 0. And so the way it works, so 0 is no evidence. If they don't turn anything in, that is a 0. We have no evidence on what they can do. 0.5 is just in case if they turn something in, but it's not like really doesn't do the assignment. It just shows they turned it in, but there's still nothing we can grade. We don't know what they can do on that standard. And the next one is beginning, which is they're starting off learning, which is perfect. That's where students start is at the beginning, right? And then we've got 2, which is approaching. They're kind of getting it. Sometimes they can do it, sometimes not. So they're approaching mastery. 3 is proficient. They have mastered that standard. And then 4 is excelling. And I've got a little image here to help you understand those. I'm going to move myself here. So the first one would be, as I said, 0 or 0.5, basically we have no evidence. It's kind of like, and I use the analogy of Star Wars, if you're familiar with that. So you're kind of like Jabba the Hutt. You don't really do anything. You just sit around and tell other people what to do and kind of just don't get anything done. That would be a 0 or a 0.5. You don't want to be Jabba, right? You want to make an effort at least. So, and next up is Luke Skywalker at the very beginning of episode 4. When he first, he's just living on his Tatooine, doesn't know anything about the Force yet, right? And then somebody tells him about it. Obi-Wan Kenobi mentions the Force, and he's like, "Ooh, what's that? I want to learn." So he's beginning to be interested in the Force, but doesn't really know much about it yet. So that would be the beginning. And we've got approaching, and this is where he's starting to learn the Force. He's able to do some things with it. For example, maybe he can pick up the rocks, right, with just his mind. But then when he has to pick up his ship, he can't do that. So he's not mastered it yet, but he's approaching. He's getting practice, right? That would be a 2. Now, when he gets to level 3, he is a Jedi. He knows how to do this. He has mastered that skill. So 3, just to clarify, is where you want to be, right? You want to be at a point when you have mastered that standard. Being a Jedi, great thing to be. There is another step that you can work towards, and that would be to get a 4. A 4 is excelling. And so I actually use Yoda for this because he not only can use the Force, obviously really well, but he can train other people. And that's the big step. Like a stage 4 is really, you know this so well that I could put you in front of the class and you could teach the rest of the classes. So that would be a 4. So just kind of a visual for you about the different levels. Again, 3 is really where you want to be. You've mastered the standard. 4 is something to work for, but don't feel bad if you don't make it as well. So there's that. So what are the standards for mythology? And we have 9 standards in this class. A lot of them are specific to mythology because this is kind of a different class from most. And then we have some that are our regular English language arts standards. So the first standard is I know what folklore is. And we talked about that at the very beginning. Folklore is anything that is told by word of mouth before it's written down. So everything that we studied in here kind of fits under the category of folklore. So that's the first thing, is understanding that. Second one we're going to talk about is I can understand and apply the hero's journey to both traditional folklore and modern stories. And we're going to get into that. You're going to learn all about the hero's journey. And then we've got several that are just categories. So first we're going to look at myths. I know what a myth is, including common characteristics and what makes it different from other folklore. So if I gave you a myth, you can say, oh yeah, that's a myth. It's not a fairy tale or fable. It's a myth because of this and that. The next one then is fairy tales. Same thing. What are the common characteristics and what makes it different from other folklore? Fairy tales. What is common about fairy tales and what makes it different from other things? And then legends, the same thing. What are the common traits? What makes it different from other folklore? So the idea is, if I were to give you folklore, you could look through it and go, oh, that must be a myth, or that belongs under fairy tale because of these traits. So in order to show me proficiency, you'll be able to know which category these stories go into. Those are the myth-specific standards that we're going to be looking at. The other ones we're looking at, can I find theme of a story? And that is a Common Core reading literature number 2. That's something you learn in all of your English classes. We focus on finding theme. So we're going to look at that here too, because we're going to read a lot of stories that can help us learn about theme. The next one, which is reading literature 10, is I can read and comprehend a novel based on folklore. So the Common Core standard says I can read at my grade level. Specifically for this class, you will read a novel based specifically on folklore. It is not true folklore because it's written by a specific person, but it's based on that. And so in order to prove this standard, you're going to have to read that book. And we're going to talk about that, and there's choices, and so don't worry about it. Just be aware that that is something that's coming up. And then the last one we're going to do, we are going to do a research paper. And so I can do research and create a proper works cited page. And we're going to talk about how to do that. We're going to guide you through all these things. But these are the things that we're going to be covering this semester. So, how it's graded. Whenever you do an assignment that covers that standard, you're going to see a rubric just like this. So the one for folklore, it's broken down. There's no 0 because if it's 0, you just didn't do anything. But if you get a 0.5, basically it's you did not address the question of folklore in this assignment. You turned something in that had nothing to do with folklore. Level 1 is you have not yet shown me that you understand what folklore is. So you've tried, but I don't. From what you turned in, I can't tell that you know what folklore is. So you'd get a 1. A 2 would be, although you started to understand, you're starting to understand what it is, it's not clear you totally understand. And so again, you're getting it, you're beginning, approaching it, but I don't feel like you really know folklore yet. So you get a 2. 3 would be, it's clear you understand what folklore is and what it is not. I know you know. And then again, that level 4 is not only is it clear that you understand what it is, but based on your answer, you could probably teach this concept to someone else. And again, that's the real trick. That level 4 means you could teach this, you know it so well. So that's what the rubric looks like for folklore. And basically all of them kind of the same category. If you don't talk about it at all, you get a 0.5. If I feel like you know it, you're good, you get a 3. If I feel like you could teach it, you get a 4. So each time I grade based on that, that's what I'm looking for each of the categories. So we're not going to read all of these because they're kind of the same thing. We will get into, reading, as I said, the reading one is based on doing that novel reading assignment that we're going to do in April. When we do that, so if you limited evidence, what you turned in doesn't have anything to do with reading a novel based on folklore. I don't know what you turned in, you get a 0.5. That's it, right? Then a beginning would be you've not provided enough information to show that you've read and understood the novel. So you gotta read the novel, you gotta understand the novel, and then prove it to me. So 1, if I just don't quite know that you've done that. 2, you've shown that you've read and comprehended it, but not really supplied enough to know that you totally understand all of it. 3 is, yep, you read the novel, you enjoyed it, you understood it, you've proven that to me. And then again, 4, you've done so well, you could probably teach this novel to someone else. So same concept for all these rubrics. Same with the research. Now the research has 2 categories. One of them is actually doing the research and proving you can do that. The other part is putting it in proper MLA format. And we will talk about that in class, but you will have to do that for the research. So just be aware that's coming up. Now, how does this look in your grade book? Because that's what I'm sure you guys really want to know. There are 3 different types of grades in your grade book. The top one is practice. So for every standard, you have 2 different categories. You have practice and you have the final grade. So your practice ones, like here says practice folklore, these are things that are graded on either completed, partially completed or missing. So it's really, did you make the effort? Did you try it out? Did you start to and then not finish it, or did you just not do it? That's really all I'm looking for practice, because it's learning. The whole point of those practice assignments is to help you so that when you do the final assignments, you'll be better at it. These practice assignments do not count directly towards your grade, but they're going to help you, again, when it comes time to do the final assignment. And so in this case, the final grade for folklore is the folklore test. So you'll take the test. Based on how you do on the test, that'll prove to me that you know the standard. And so that's what your grade is based on. And each standard has a separate category. So obviously you see folklore, there's one for hero's journey, there's one for myth, all of those categories that we've talked about. And you're going to do something for each category to prove where you're at with that. That is the main bulk of your grade. That is the 95%. Okay? The final category, which is just 5% of your grade, is citizenship. And really, that's just doing those extra things that we need to do. So that includes doing that diagnostic, right? That count day quiz, things like that. And that is just 5% of your grade, and really it's just based on did you do it or not. If you do it, you get full credit. If you don't get credit. So the grade itself really comes down to the final grades per standard. What I would suggest, though, is, again, those practice assignments definitely help you to be ready to take the final assignments and to excel on those. So even though they don't count directly towards your grade, they're going to help you to do good on the final for each standard. So hopefully that makes sense to you. I think that covers it. If you do have any questions about any of that, let me know. If you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I will talk to you later. Thanks.